He sneered right in a child's face, mocking the idea that a black woman could ever wear the uniform of Special Forces. The little girl froze, tears swelling in her eyes, until the doors opened, and her mother stepped inside wearing that very uniform. Jania Carter was only 12, wandering the shoe section of Academy Sports in Charlotte, giggling with her best friend about school, sneakers, and how badly she wanted the new Jordans. She spoke with the casual rhythm of any kid, until her words suddenly caught attention. "My mom's not picking me up until she gets back from Fort Liberty," Jania said, shutting a shoebox with a little snap. "She's in Special Forces, so her schedule's all over the place." Her friend's eyes widened. "Wait, you mean like actual army? Like fighting?" "Yeah," Jania shrugged, as if she were talking about her favorite ice cream. "She's Master Sergeant Elena Carter. Just got back from a mission overseas." It should have been just another playful boast kids throw around. But then came the sound, low at first, then rising into a mocking laugh that cut through the store like a blade. A few steps away, browsing through a rack of jackets, stood Deputy Mark Calloway. Off-duty, dressed in jeans and a Panthers hoodie, his badge clipped loosely at his belt like a prop. He didn't look like a cop, but the laugh was his, sharp, dismissive, and loud enough for everyone nearby to notice. "Special Forces," Calloway repeated, smirking. "Come on, kid. I've been in law enforcement 2 decades. I can tell you right now, your mom isn't out running with the Green Berets. Especially not." He paused, eyes narrowing in a way that said more than words. "Especially not someone like her." The sting landed deep. Jania's cheeks burned red, lips pressed tight as whispers circled the aisle. A mom with a stroller slowed her cart, pretending to browse socks but clearly listening. 2 teenagers laughed into their hands. Her friend leaned in, whispering, "Just ignore him, Jania. He doesn't know anything." But ignoring wasn't an option. Calloway wasn't finished. His smirk widened. "Look, I get it," he said, chuckling. "Kids make stuff up. My son used to swear I was Batman. Same kind of thing. Cute story. But let's be real. It's not true." The heat of shame crept up Jania's neck. She wanted to defend her mom, but the words tangled and stuck in her throat. Her hands shook as she shoved the showbox back onto the shelf, the cardboard scraping harshly against the display. "Why would you say that out loud?" her friend whispered nervously. Jania swallowed hard. "Because it's true." That small, steady defiance only drew out louder laughter from Calloway. He tilted his head toward the small circle of strangers now pretending to browse nearby. "See what I mean?" he said with a smirk. "Cute kid spinning a fantasy. Look, sweetheart, there's nothing wrong with wanting your mom to be a hero. But you don't have to make up fairy tales." Fairy tales. The word hit like a slap. Her mother was no storybook character. She was real, stronger than anyone Jania knew. A woman who tucked her in one night and was gone on a mission the next. But here, under the harsh glow of the sporting goods store, Jania had no way to prove it. And Calloway knew that. His smug grin showed he thought he'd already won. "Tell you what," he said, tapping the badge clipped to his belt. "If your mom's really Special Forces, maybe she should swing by the station. We could all use a good laugh." Jania's chest tightened. She thought of her mother's scarred hands, the rows of medals gleaming in their living room, the way her presence commanded silence, even in an airport crowd. Her mother had faced dangers most people couldn't imagine. And here was a man reducing all of it to a joke in front of strangers. "You don't know anything about her," Jania finally managed to say, her voice cracking but steady enough to carry. The words hung heavy in the air. For the briefest moment, Calloway's grin faltered, but then he clapped his hands together, dismissive. "Sure, kid. Whatever you say." Around them, shoppers exchanged uneasy glances. Some smirked, some looked away, but none stepped in. Not one person spoke up to say, "She's telling the truth." The silence only deepened Jania's humiliation. Her friend shifted nervously. "Jania, maybe we should wait outside." But Jania couldn't move. Her sneakers felt cemented to the linoleum floor. This wasn't just embarrassment anymore. This was about her mom, her truth, her pride. And watching it get mocked in front of strangers made her chest burn. Still, Jania lowered her eyes to the floor tiles, because what else could she do? She was just a kid. What she didn't know was that at the very moment she silently wished for her mother to walk in, Master Sergeant Elena Carter was already crossing the mall, stepping through the sliding glass doors in full uniform. Inside the store, the walls seemed to close in. Every corner felt heavy with eyes, shoppers pretending to browse, but watching her every move. Jania hugged her arms around herself, shifting uncomfortably, but nothing helped. Deputy Mark Calloway leaned lazily against a display rack, his voice carrying across aisles stacked with jerseys and backpacks, as if the whole thing was a show for his amusement. "You know," he drawled, his smirk curling into something colder. "People don't understand what it really takes to get into special forces. Years of brutal training, non-stop deployments. Only the best of the best make it. Not exactly the kind of thing you brag about at a school pickup line." He laughed again, shaking his head. "And you expect me to believe your mom is one of them?" The words twisted into Jania's chest like barbed wire. She wished she could explain about the months her mother was gone, about the letters written in pencil, because phones weren't always safe. But how could she, standing there under his stare, surrounded by strangers who seemed to be waiting for her to break? Her friend Layla glanced nervously at the shoppers nearby. "Jania, let's just go," she whispered. But Jania shook her head. Her throat was tight, but the words forced their way out. "I don't care if you believe me. My mom doesn't need your approval." That should have been the end. But Calloway wasn't the kind of man who let a kid have the last word. He pushed off the display and stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sting, but still loud enough for everyone to hear. "Listen, sweetheart," he said, his tone syrupy with condescension. "I know you want to be proud, but making up stories? That's not the way. People are just going to laugh. And honestly, a little girl like you doesn't even know what real sacrifice looks like." Jania's ears burned. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall. Her fists clenched at her sides, trembling with anger. From across the aisle, a man in a baseball cap muttered, "Just let the kid talk, man." But his voice was too low, and Calloway ignored him completely. Jania swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak again. Her voice wavered but carried. "You're wrong about her. You're wrong about everything." That only made Calloway laugh louder. But this one wasn't amusement. It was the laugh of someone convinced he'd already won. Calloway scanned the store, as if inviting everyone to join in on the joke. "Wrong, kid. I've worked beside real heroes. I've met soldiers. I've met the men who actually go overseas, who take on the dangerous jobs. And trust me, none of them look like your mom." The last words landed heavier than all the rest. Jania froze, her face burning with shame and fury. She knew exactly what he meant, and so did everyone listening. Layla gasped. "That's not fair," she burst out. "You don't even know her." Calloway turned his eyes on her, his grin widening. "And you do? What, did the two of you swap war stories over recess? Please. I've been in uniform longer than you've been alive. I know the difference between the real thing and a fairy tale." Layla shrank back, but Jania stayed rooted to the spot, even as her hands trembled. "You'll see," she whispered. "She's coming." The officer smirked. "Sure she is. Maybe she'll drop down through the skylight. How about that?" He chuckled at his own joke, shaking his head. "Don't worry, kid. You'll learn. The world's tough. Better to face the truth now than live in make-believe." Whispers spread through the store. Some shook their heads, others raised phones to record. Jania spotted a woman thumbing through yoga pants, her camera angled carefully in their direction. Near the registers, a teenage boy elbowed his friend and pointed. The humiliation pressed down on her like a heavy pack strapped too tight. For the first time, Jania wished she had said nothing at all. Maybe she should have kept her mother's life private, the way Elena always reminded her to. But then she thought of Calloway's smirk, of the way the crowd might leave believing him instead of her, and her chest lit with fire. She wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand and straightened her shoulders. "You'll see," she repeated, louder this time, firmer. Calloway leaned back against the rack of hoodies, arms folded like a judge closing a case. "We'll see, huh?" he said, smirking. "All right then, I'll wait." The silence after Calloway's words was louder than the music humming through the store speakers. Every second dragged, the crowd shifting, restless but curious. Some waited to see if Jania would crack, if she'd bow her head and shrink away in shame. She didn't. But while Jania stood trembling in front of the sneaker shelves, fighting not to cry, her mother was already striding past the food court. Each step of her boots echoed against the tile floor, carrying her closer to the store, closer to changing everything. Jania's heartbeat thundered so loud she was sure the whole world could hear it. Her body screamed to run, to hide, to rewind the moment she'd opened her mouth. If only she had said, "My mom's busy." None of this would have happened. Now strangers stared at her like she was the lead in a play she never auditioned for. Deputy Calloway leaned back like a man enjoying an easy afternoon. Arms folded, smirk plastered across his face. He rocked lazily on his heels. "You're awfully quiet now," he taunted, voice dripping smugness. "Starting to realize you stretched the truth a little?" The words stabbed deep. Jania's eyes stayed fixed on the floor, but his voice yanked her head back up every time. She could almost hear the whispers slithering around her. "Why's he going after her like that?" someone muttered from another aisle. "Maybe the kid did make it up," another voice whispered back. Knees weak, Jania felt Layla tugging on her sleeve again. "Jania, please. Let's just wait outside. You don't have to keep talking to him." But her chest burned too hot. Anger, humiliation, pride all twisted together. "I'm not lying," she whispered under her breath. Calloway leaned in, his voice dropping just enough to sound like advice, but loud enough to sting. "Listen, kid. I'm trying to save you from yourself. You go around spinning stories like this, people are going to laugh. Not everyone's going to be nice about it. Your mom works hard. She takes care of you. That's enough. You don't need to pretend she's some war hero." Her fingernails dug deep into her palms. Pretend, that word echoed in her skull. Pretend, as if the nights she cried herself to sleep missing her mom were imaginary, as if the months of silence and waiting were just some kind of game, as if the medals in the shadow box on their wall were souvenirs from a gift shop. For the first time, doubt slipped in. Not because Jania questioned her mother, but because she questioned herself. Maybe she shouldn't have spoken so casually. Maybe it was her fault strangers now thought her mother's life was a joke. She bit the inside of her cheek until it stung. Layla whispered, "He doesn't matter. You know what's true." But it didn't feel like that. Truth didn't matter when no one believed you. Calloway shifted his weight, scanning the store as if keeping an audience entertained. "Tell you what," he said with a chuckle, "if your mom walks in here in uniform, I'll buy you those sneakers myself." He gestured at the wall of shoes. "But until then, maybe keep the fairy tales at home." Fairy tales again. Her vision blurred, but she refused to blink. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. A woman nearby, clutching a basket of clearance shirts, finally spoke. "She's just a kid," she said firmly. Calloway turned his head slowly, locking eyes with the woman. "And I'm just telling her the truth. Better she hear it now than keep embarrassing herself." The woman frowned, but looked away, shaking her head. No one else said a word. Jania's stomach twisted. Why didn't anyone defend her? Why was it easier for everyone to stand and watch than to say she was right? Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Courage isn't loud, Jania. Sometimes it's just standing tall when you want to shrink." But standing tall felt impossible when the very floor seemed to shove her down. She pressed her lips together until they hurt. "You'll see," she whispered again, her voice trembling. Calloway sighed, feigning boredom. "Kid, I've heard it all. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents. Believe me, every kid's got a story. Nothing wrong with wanting to feel special. But the truth?" He tapped his chest. "The truth doesn't need defending." The words sank deep. Because wasn't that what she was doing? Defending? If the truth was so solid, why did she feel like she was losing? Layla suddenly stepped forward, her small frame shaking. "You're being mean." "She's not lying." Calloway raised a brow. "And how do you know?" "Because I've seen pictures," Layla snapped. "Her mom's in uniform. She's got medals." She stopped, the word catching, sounding small against his sneer. Calloway chuckled under his breath. "Pictures? Anyone can buy a uniform at an army surplus store. Doesn't make it real." Jania clenched her jaw. She hated that he had an answer for everything, hated that with every word he spoke the crowd leaned a little closer, as if his version made more sense than hers. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to straighten. "You'll see," she repeated for the third time, louder, steadier. Calloway tilted his head, smiling like a man indulging a child. "All right, I'm waiting." The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were just watching. The air grew heavy with expectation, each second stretching into an eternity. Jania's palms were slick, her breath shallow. And then, just faintly, she heard it. Boots striking tile, steady and sure. What Jania didn't know was that her mother's arrival wouldn't just silence the laughter. It would flip the entire store on its head. The sliding glass doors at the mall entrance hissed open, letting in the sounds of the food court. Master Sergeant Elena Carter strode inside, posture sharp enough to command attention without a word. Her camouflage uniform was crisp, patches gleaming under the overhead lights, beret tucked neatly under one arm. She had just come from a ceremony at Fort Liberty, deciding to surprise her daughter by picking her up herself. She hadn't expected to walk into a crowd. From across the store, Jania spotted her instantly. Relief surged, so fast, almost stole her breath. Her heart leapt, but so did her fear, because now her mother was about to see everything. Elena's boots struck the polished floor in a rhythm that didn't falter. Her eyes scanned the racks of sports gear, the cluster of shoppers, then landed on her daughter, face flushed, fists clenched at her sides. Beside her, Layla stood protective but frightened, and across from them stood Deputy Calloway, leaning back like he owned the space. Nicole's jaw set harder. Her boots barely made a sound as she closed the last steps between them, but her presence was thunderous. Amaya clung to her mother's touch like it was armor. Reeves' hand twitched near his belt, not toward his weapon, just a nervous habit. But even that small movement betrayed how unsettled he had become. "Answer the question," Nicole said again, her tone controlled, not raised, but edged with steel. "Why?" Reeves' mouth opened, then closed. His eyes flicked to the watching crowd, searching for support, for someone to laugh along with him again. But the laughter was gone. Only silence stared back. Finally, he forced a shrug. "I just thought she was exaggerating. Kids make up stories. That's all." Nicole's gaze didn't waver. "And instead of teaching her to be proud of her truth, you chose to belittle her in public." She tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing. "Tell me, officer, how would you feel if someone mocked your child that way?" Reeves flinched. Just barely, but enough for everyone watching to see. Amaya's chest swelled, the shame that had weighed her down moments ago, unraveling thread by thread. Beside her, Callan's lips curved into the smallest smile, as if even she felt safer under Nicole's shadow. Reeves cleared his throat, his voice thin now. "It wasn't meant to go that far, but it did," Nicole said. Her words dropped like stones into still water, rippling outward. "You set the tone in this store. You made my daughter feel small. You made every bystander think silence was the safest choice. That is not harmless. That is not fun. That is cowardice dressed as humor." A murmur passed through the onlookers. The woman with the clearance basket hugged it tighter to her chest, nodding almost unconsciously. Nicole straightened, her hand still resting on Amaya's shoulder, grounding her. "You wear that badge," she said, her eyes flicking once more to the gleaming metal on Reeves' hip. "That means the community sees you as authority. That means children are supposed to trust you. And yet, the first thing you chose to do with that trust was mock." Reeves' jaw worked. His smirk was long gone, his face rigid, as though carved from something brittle that might crack if pressed further. "Ma'am," he started, his voice quieter now. "I might have been out of line." Nicole's stare stayed locked on him. "Not might have. You were." The crowd shifted, a few heads nodding. A teenager near the register whispered, "Dang, she's not playing." Amaya's pulse pounded in her ears, but it wasn't fear this time. It was pride. Her mom wasn't just proving she existed, she was proving Amaya's voice had been right all along. Nicole let the silence hang until Reeves dropped his gaze. Then, finally, she spoke again, her tone even but resolute. "An apology," she said, "to my daughter." Now, the weight of the room pressed in. Reeves' Adam's apple bobbed once, twice, and slowly, under the watching eyes of strangers, he turned to Amaya. "I." His words caught, brittle in his throat. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have said what I did. I'm sorry." Amaya's heart thundered. For a moment she didn't know what to do, whether to nod or cry or stay frozen. But Nicole's hand squeezed her shoulder, steadying her. And the girl who had been called a liar finally stood tall enough to meet his eyes. Nicole's words carried like a blade drawn slow, sharp enough that the crowd leaned in without realizing. "You think this ends with a shrug? With a weak apology?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes pinned Reeves in place. "No, not until you understand." Reeves shifted, his jaw tight. "I already said I was wrong." Nicole tilted her head, unimpressed. "Saying it isn't the same as knowing why. Do you understand what you took from her? What you tried to take from me?" Reeves' throat bobbed. He didn't answer. Nicole glanced down at Amaya, then back at him. "You thought you were mocking me, but you weren't. You were mocking her. You turned my daughter's pride into a punchline." She let the words hang, heavy and undeniable. "And that's something I will not let you walk away from without reckoning." The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Agreement rippling through the store like an unseen tide. A man by the electronics counter called out, "She's right." And another voice followed, "Own it, man." Reeves' eyes darted around, realizing the weight of the crowd had shifted against him entirely. His hands flexed at his sides, restless, like he wanted to vanish. Nicole didn't flinch. "You wear a badge. That means responsibility. It means power. And when you laughed, you abused both." She leaned forward slightly, voice still low, but each word struck like a hammer. "My daughter is not your joke. My rank is not your disbelief. And this uniform," she tapped the insignia on her chest, "is not here to fit your imagination. It's here because I earned every inch of it." The air grew tighter, charged. Reeves swallowed hard, no smirk left, no excuses ready. Amaya felt her mother's hand squeeze her shoulder, And this time, instead of trembling, her spine straightened. The shame she'd felt minutes ago was gone, replaced with something fiercer: pride. Nicole let her gaze sweep the onlookers, making sure each of them heard her final words. Truth does not need permission, and respect is not optional. It's the bare minimum. Reeves lowered his head, his silence louder than any defense he might have tried. The crowd stared, unblinking, waiting. And in that moment, Amaya understood. This wasn't just about her mother defending her. It was about her mother teaching everyone watching what strength looked like. Nicole's hand stayed firm on her daughter's shoulder. Her eyes never left Reeves. "This conversation," she said softly, "isn't over." Reeves' lips pressed into a thin line. The weight of Nicole's words left no room for retreat. The eyes of the crowd pinned him in place, stripping away whatever authority his badge once carried. His voice was tight when he finally spoke again. "I said I was sorry. What else do you want me to do?" Nicole's gaze didn't soften. "You think this is about me wanting something from you?" "No, this is about you facing what you did." Her hand rested firmly on Amaya's shoulder. "You mocked a child's truth. You made her feel small for being proud of her mother. That doesn't disappear with a few half-hearted words." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Reeves shifted his weight again, but Nicole didn't move an inch. "This," she continued, her voice calm but unyielding, "isn't just about one girl in one store. It's about every child who learns too early that honesty gets laughed at. Every kid who swallows their words because someone in power decided it was easier to humiliate than to listen." The crowd was utterly still now, their faces turned toward her like students to a teacher. A few shoppers nodded quietly. One woman dabbed at her eyes. Nicole's hand squeezed Amaya's shoulder gently before she looked down at her. "And you, Amaya, you never need to regret speaking the truth. Not about me. Not about yourself. Not about anything." Amaya's throat ached, but it wasn't from holding back tears this time. It was from pride swelling inside her, filling every corner where shame had been. The crowd's silence broke into scattered applause. Some clapped hesitantly at first, but the sound grew, spreading through the store until it was undeniable. Reeves stood frozen, his face red, his authority in tatters. Nicole didn't smile, didn't revel in his discomfort. She simply stood, composed and steady, the living proof of her daughter's words. Amaya looked up at her mother and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "You didn't just fight for me. You fought for everyone watching." Nicole glanced down, her expression softening. "That's what truth is, Amaya. When you stand for it, it never stands alone." Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, clearly wishing the ground would swallow him whole. "I already said I was sorry," he muttered. Nicole's gaze didn't soften. "Then live like it. Next time you meet a child with pride in their voice, don't strip it away. Let them keep it. Because once you take that from a kid, it's not so easily given back." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, almost unexpectedly, a young man near the checkout clapped once. Another joined. Within seconds, scattered applause filled the store. It wasn't loud or rowdy. It was steady, deliberate, and supportive. Reeves' face flushed crimson. He gave a curt nod and began edging toward the exit, no longer the center of authority, but the man who'd been taught a lesson in front of strangers. As he retreated, the applause wasn't for him. It was for Nicole and her daughter. That truth stung more than anything she had said. Amaya turned to her mom, her voice small but steady. "Thank you." Nicole bent down so her eyes were level with her daughter's. "No, Amaya. Thank you for telling the truth when it wasn't easy. That's braver than anything I've ever done in uniform." The words sank deep, settling in Amaya's heart like armor. For the first time that day, she believed it. As the crowd began to disperse, Amaya realized the lesson wasn't just for Reeves, it was for everyone who had stood and watched. A few shoppers lingered, pretending to browse shelves while sneaking glances at Nicole and her daughter. The tension was gone, replaced with something quieter, heavier, thoughtfulness. Amaya stood taller beside her mother, still holding Callan's hand. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. Nicole glanced down. "You all right?" Amaya nodded. "Yeah, I hate that it happened." Her mother's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "I know. But sometimes moments like this teach us more than 100 quiet days ever could. You don't forget them, and neither will anyone who watched." Callan looked up, eyes wide. "You were amazing. Everyone was listening to you." Nicole gave a faint smile. "I wasn't just talking to him. I was talking to all of you. Never let anyone tell you your truth doesn't matter." A man in a baseball cap, the same one who had muttered earlier, raised his voice now. "Ma'am, thank you. I've got a daughter myself. She's 9. I hope she grows up with that kind of courage." Nicole nodded once, her expression steady. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about speaking anyway. Amaya's chest swelled. Hearing those words spoken aloud in front of strangers made her feel as though her mother's pride in her had been carved into the air itself. As the last of the crowd drifted away, a woman paused near Nicole, lowering her voice, though Amaya could still hear. "Thank you for your service. And thank you for showing him he was wrong." Nicole's gaze softened. "We all serve in our own ways. Today, my daughter served by standing tall. That's something worth respecting." The woman smiled and walked off, leaving Nicole and Amaya standing beside the sneakers that suddenly didn't seem so important anymore. Amaya tugged gently at her mom's sleeve. "Did I make it worse by saying it?" Nicole shook her head. "You made it better. You didn't hide who I am. You spoke the truth, even when people laughed. That takes more strength than some adults ever learn." For a moment, Amaya felt the weight of the day lift. She could breathe again. Callan squeezed her hand with a grin. "Told you he was wrong." Amaya smiled for the first time since it began. This time, the smile stayed. Amaya laughed softly, wiping at her eyes. "Yeah, you did." They walked toward the exit together, Nicole's boots steady against the tile. People still glanced at them, but not with ridicule, now with something closer to admiration. As they stepped out into the wider mall, Amaya's mind replayed the moment. The laughter, the whispers, the sting of doubt. And then her mom's voice, clear, unshakable, cutting through it all. She realized that even though it had been one of the hardest moments of her young life, It was also one of the most important. Nicole slowed and bent slightly toward her. Amaya, remember this. People will doubt you. They'll laugh, dismiss you, try to make you smaller. But you never let them take your truth. Not for me. Not for anyone. Promise me that. Amaya looked up, eyes shining. I promise. Nicole kissed the top of her daughter's head, the simple gesture carrying more weight than any speech. By the time they reached the car, Amaya felt lighter. She still remembered Ree's smirk, but it no longer dragged her down. Instead, it reminded her how quickly arrogance crumbles when faced with truth. As the doors shut and the mall slipped into the background, Amaya leaned against the seat, still holding Callan's hand. I'll never be embarrassed about Mom again, she thought, because that day, under the harsh glare of store lights, she learned something that would never leave her. Never let anyone laugh you out of your own truth. And maybe, just maybe, the people who had watched learned something too. That respect costs nothing, but withholding it can scar deeply. Nicole started the car, glancing in the rearview mirror. You girls ready to head home? Amaya smiled for the first time since it all began. Yeah, let's go home. The mall faded in the distance, but the lesson stayed. For everyone who had witnessed it, whether they admitted it aloud or not, it would echo long after the sound of Nicole's boots left the tile floor. Life has a way of placing us in moments we don't expect. Moments that test whether we'll stay silent or speak, shrink or stand tall. If this story touched you, let it remind you. Always defend the truth, no matter who tries to silence it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe.